Alright, guys. Voices should be off. We are going to remind ourselves how we divide decimals now, so I need you all paying attention. Okay, so let's say I gave you this example. 10.35 and divide that by 2.3. What do you think the first thing I need to do? If we're talking about steps, what do you think my first step's going to be, Emily?
Like putting in the house.
Good. Which one would go inside the house, Emily?
10.35.
Good. Remember that first number, guys. Top dog always goes in the house, whether it's smaller, bigger, doesn't matter. Whatever number comes first. So step number 1, write the problem with the first number inside the division bracket is what it's called. So that means I would write 10 and 35/100, 10.35 inside that division bracket, and I would write 2.3 on the outside. Any questions on that part, guys? Step 2. What do you think I have to do now, Caitlin?
You have to put the decimal in the 10.35. You have to move it over 2 spots over to the 5 area.
Okay, I don't necessarily have to move it 2 spots, but you're right, I do have to move it. What do you think, Ethan?
You have to move the outside number. You have to move it to the edge of the division bracket.
Okay, so this 2.3 here, right here, guys, I cannot divide by a decimal, which means I have to turn my decimal into a whole number. So in order to turn it into a whole number, I'm going to move that decimal how many places?
1.
And if I move it 1 on the outside, what do I have to do on the inside? So then I'm going to move it 1 on the inside. So it's essentially saying 103.5 divided by 23. So step 2, let's write this down. Rewrite the outside number as a whole number. I cannot divide by a decimal, so I have to make sure that it is a whole number. So rewrite the outside number as a decimal and move the decimal on the inside as needed. If I move it 1, I have to move it 1. You're always moving it the same number of spaces. So if I move the decimal on the outside, I have to move the decimal on the inside. Now what operation do we do, guys? Divide. So step 3 is divide without worrying about the decimal. Do we do remainders anymore, guys?
No.
So let's remind ourselves, no remainders. You keep going, okay? No remainders. Keep that decimal going. Add those zeros as necessary. Alright guys, so can 23 go into 1?
No.
Can 23 go into 10?
No.
Can 23 go into 103?
Yes.
Okay, figure out how many times. Don't say it out loud yet. Who thinks they know how many times? How many times does it go in?
4.
It goes in 4 times. So, now I have a question. Where does that 4 go? Above what number? Because it's extremely important that we put it above the correct number. If we don't, we're going to mess something up. Lindsay? Not above the 0. Above the 3. Why does the 4 go above the 3? Ella?
Because that's the number that we were dividing it by.
Good. We were telling me that 4 goes into 103 23 times. So you have to make sure you put it above that correct number. So it goes above the 4 because 23 goes into 103. What is 4 times 23?
4 times 23,
92. So I put the 103 and I'm subtracting 92 from it. So everyone subtract for me. What is 103 minus 92?
11.
So I have 11. Now what should I do?
Bring down 5.
Good. Bring down that 5. So now it's 23 into 115. It has to be more than 4. We know that because we know 23 times 4 is 92. So how many times do you think it goes in, everyone?
5.
And what is 23 times 5?
115.
So perfect. We don't even have to keep going anymore, do we? We don't have to add zeros. We don't have to do any of that stuff. If you don't finish, you have to add a 0 and keep going. What is always my rule? Do you know my rule when it comes to dividing with decimals? How many places do you always have to go to? You have to always go to 3. So no matter what, you go till there are 3 decimal points. Is that understood? Okay, questions so far? Last step obviously has to deal with placing the decimal. So place the decimal point. In the answer. Above. So place the decimal point in the answer above. So all you're doing is bring it directly up. So bring that decimal point exactly where it is at and bring it directly up, especially if you're lining up your numbers properly. That will help you out. If you're not lining your numbers up properly and your work's kind of all over the place, this is going to be difficult for you. So where should that decimal go? In front of the 4, in between the 4 and the 5, or behind the 5?
In between.
So my answer is what?
4.5.
4.5. Because that decimal point needs to go directly up above, which is between the 4 and the 5. Questions? How many of you remember learning this last year? Say, hopefully you remember learning it, you just need to practice it, right guys? Okay, so let's go to the next page, we get and I'm going to write dividing decimals here. And 11/11/19's the date. And I'm going to do example 1. So 57 96/100, so 57.96, and we're going to divide it by 6.3, or 6 and 3/10. Which number goes inside the house? 57.96. And I'm dividing that by 6.3. The first number always goes in the house, or the top number in a fraction always goes inside that house, because it's the first number that is listed. Now what? I have to do something before I can divide. What do I have to do? I have to move my decimal, so 6.3 should become what? 63, because I want that to be a whole number. And 57.96 should become what?
5,796.
It is not 5,000. Good. You're only moving it one spot. If we move it one spot on the outside, we move it one spot on the inside. If I move it 2 spots on the outside, how many do I move it on the inside? 2. It's always the same number. Now, if you want, could I technically go ahead and put my decimal up here right away? Absolutely. That's something that I've always done, just so that I know here is where my decimal goes. I can't hopefully mess it up then. So now it's figuring out, guys, how many times does 63 go into 579? Figure that out for me. Don't say it out loud yet. How many times, guys?
9.
Good. Now, where does that 9 go?
Above the 9.
It goes above the 9. So it goes in front of that decimal point, above the 9, because 63 goes into 579 9 times. So it has to go above the number that's the last number you went into. What is 63 times 9?
567.
Good. 567. So I need to do 579 minus 567. What's that give me? 12. And what do I do now? So now I need to figure out how many times 63 goes into 126. Don't say it out loud yet. How many times, guys?
2.
And that's exactly 126. So what is my answer here, guys? 9.2. So essentially, all dividing and dividing decimals, that's how it'll work no matter what.